Since 2004, Iowa livestock farmers have turned to the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers for free, confidential, and expert assistance in raising livestock responsibly and successfully. Join us at the fence line to hear from industry experts and farmers about topics important to livestock agriculture here in Iowa. The fence line, where the gates always open. Well, friends, welcome to the Fence Line Podcast. My name is Bob Quinn. The Fence Line is produced by the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers. Now, we talk about the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers as the livestock folks here in the state of Iowa. If you have questions about livestock moving forward, they are the first place to call or check out their website. They have the answers to a lot of questions surrounding livestock production here in the state of Iowa. This podcast will center around the Farming for the Future conference that the Coalition hosted. Now, before we get too far gone here, I want to remind you that if you would like to take a look at the materials presented during the Farming for the Future conference, you can do so by going to the Coalition's website, and that is supportfarmers.com. The Big Show broadcast from that program. Let's get started with the Farming for the Future conference. Farming for the Future. Brian Waddingham is sitting in with me right now as we get the day's program going. Brian, you have a room full of what I would call the future of agriculture sitting out there. I mean, you talk about hitting a target audience. You guys are doing very well with the young folks in this audience.
Yeah, I'd say we hit that out of the park today. We've got 195 people sitting in there today, and I would say the average age is probably 22. So I think that speaks volumes for the optimism that's out there in the livestock industry moving forward. A lot of these students, men and women, are going to graduate, and maybe they'll go on to get a job in ag. But I think a lot of them have plans to go back home and farm. So this is in our wheelhouse. These are the people that need to be here finding out about the outlook on the economy side of things, but also rules and regs and what's coming down from that.
Well, we talk about how financing drives agriculture, and we're going to be hearing that throughout the day today. If folks aren't here but want to catch up on what is being talked about, you'll be posting the proceedings from today's event on your website.
Yes, that is correct. And again, encourage people to look through those. And if you've got questions, give the Coalition a call. We'd be glad to go over stuff with you.
Okay, you mentioned the Coalition. Who should be calling the Coalition? And what are some of the things that they should be talking about with you?
So, if you're looking to get into livestock production or you're looking to grow your existing livestock farm, that's who should be calling us today. We can do everything from helping you find the best site for that new barn or feedlot, help interpret the rules and regulations and how they will impact your specific farm, work to enhance neighbor relations, and then also implement best management practices like planting windbreaks around your livestock barns and feedlots.
You have a catchy piece here on the front of the program. It's one of your print ads, and basically it says, "You work the farm, we'll work the red tape." And your subheading is, "You don't need to know all the rules, but you need to know the Coalition."
Yes, we thought that fit very well with what our mission is, and that's to help Iowa's livestock industry grow. And with more than 250 pages of rules and regulations out there impacting livestock farms, it's almost impossible for the livestock farmer to keep up on all that. So that's why we're here.
We're going to talk more throughout the day today with some of the experts on things like finance and get an economic outlook, and also talk about some of the rules and regulations. But there are new rules and regulations that's going to be introduced into the livestock industry almost every year.
Yeah, that's right. And, DNR just went through a major revision of Chapter 65 in that code with livestock rules and regs. And this afternoon, we're dedicating most of the afternoon to talking about those new rules and how they're going to impact livestock farmers going forward.
Well, again, how can we find out more about the Coalition?
The best way, you can visit us online at supportfarmers.com or give us a call at 800-932-2436.
Now, the first person we heard from today talks about financing agriculture and talks about an economic outlook. Any surprises in there? You listened to the program.
Well, I think some of it has to do with the price of corn and where that's going to go as we move forward. Also, where we're at in that cattle cycle. We need more cattle in Iowa for sure. We gotta eat that corn. So again, that was a couple big takeaways that I had. But he did a great job with that presentation and got a lot of questions. And it ranged everywhere from where's the hog market going to go to where's the soybean oil industry heading with the aviation fuel. So a lot of guys and women in that audience are thinking ahead today.
Well, we are talking about the economic outlook with Matt Erickson. Matt's going to be joining us coming up in just a little bit here on the big show. Brian Waddingham with us. We're here on behalf of the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers. Farming for the Future is the name of the conference. If you want to find out more about the proceedings, it's going to be a dandy program. So Brian will have that posted on the website at supportfarmers.com. Well, I have mentioned the economics of agriculture and an economic outlook for farming here in the state of Iowa. Let's get back to our Farming for the Future conference. We're talking right now with Matt Erickson, and Matt is with Farm Credit Services of America. Matt was the first presenter on the program. Matt, I got to sit in on a little bit of your presentation. Number one, you're a farmer.
Yep, farmer from Indiana.
So come from boots in the ground, eyeballs out in the fields, what we like to call it. And when we talk about agriculture, we know that credit drives agriculture.
Absolutely.
It has to happen. Let me ask you this. You had a lot of young people in the audience today, and one of the first things that they want to know about is credit available for me? I want to start farming here in the future. What do you tell them?
Yeah, first, Bob, good to be with you. And second, the turnout here was just phenomenal. It was good to see those students out there in the audience and wanting to learn more about markets and where the markets are going. First and foremost, agriculture is a capital-intensive industry, and credit's really important. Basically, the cost to farm is expensive. And so having that lender-farmer relationship is really important for these upcoming students who want to go back into farming. And so, you look at everything in agriculture and everything's cyclical, right? And we've learned that, from previous years. And, I think right now with regard to what we're experiencing in the agricultural economy is we could be, seeing a little bit of margin compression here as we go into next year. Corn's likely not going to be $6.50. We're seeing, we've been under a situation where for corn at least, we've had some supply issues. Now we need to transition to demand. And so, this year, I think production-wise, we had a really good corn crop that was out there. That's driven down prices here from what we've experienced the beginning of the year. So margin compression is going to be a big issue as we head into 2024. But again, everything in agriculture is cyclical, so there's a lot of opportunity ahead in agriculture. So overall, there are some bearish things in the market, but agriculture as a whole, I'm bullish.
Well, Matt, one of the things we used to say about young people in agriculture, number one, they trade sweat equity for maybe asset value to get going. And also, it used to be they would introduce livestock into the operation because that would help with cash flow a little bit. Is that the case today, or are you telling maybe young folks to hold off on livestock?
Well, I think every situation's different by producer. And I know, when we talk about, specific industries and livestock, I'm a hog producer. Hog producers across the country, margins haven't been very good here recently. And so we've had a pretty negative stretch within the hog industry. But, obviously if you can weather the storm out of this kind of, depressed time in the hog industry, there could be some opportunity that comes out of it. On the beef side, you look at beef, the beef inventory situation's not expected to grow until 2025, meaning that rebuilding back of the herd will not be expected until 2025. So all those things, I think when we talk specifically about livestock, and I stress this with the students in the room, is one, I think there's going to be an intersection where the macroeconomy plays with the agricultural economy. And what I mean by that is, one, interest rates where the Fed has their benchmark rate is between 5.25%, 5.5%. You look over the past 10 to 15 years, it's been 0.25%. So the cost of borrowing has increased here significantly for many producers. And so, you look at that situation and you look at the consumer, and the consumer is still relatively healthy. From a real, personal, real disposable income per capita, the consumer is still making 3% year over year. And so the consumer wants beef. And so, any time that I talk with, a cattle audience, cattle farmers, the consumer is going to be king for them in 2024. And so a lot of leverage will be with the consumer in terms of beef demand as we go through next year.
The beef sector is probably the hardest one to turn on and get return on in a quick time.
Sure. Well, what's so difficult about the macroeconomy is consumption makes about 70% of GDP. And so for economists to forecast what this looks like here in 2024, I think a lot of economists would say they didn't expect the consumer to be this resilient. And, there were some estimates here. We could have been in a recession here earlier this year. Frankly, the consumers held everything up, driven by the labor market. I mean, we've been multiple months of under 4% unemployment. That has a direct impact in terms of what the Fed plans to do with their decisions of what to do with interest rates. So all this, coincides with the demand on the agricultural side within the economy. But again, I think 2024 is going to be a critical year for producers, given the fact that this could coincide with the overall state of the U.S. economy.
You made one statement. You said that agriculture will be driven by the corn market next year.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, you think about the corn market, and you've got row crop producers, and then you've got livestock producers that rely on corn for feed. And, you look at the situation where a lot of news has been, dictated with regard to going from La Nina to El Nino. And we're kind of right now in an El Nino pattern. And does that last until the corn season of next year? It could. I don't plan to try to be a meteorologist, but again, you look at that situation where we could be in a situation where we need demand for corn.
Talking with Matt Erickson, and a reminder, all of the proceedings from the Farming for the Future Conference can be found at the website supportfarmers.com. A reminder here, friends, you're listening to The Fence Line, a production of the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers. What do you say we find out a little bit more about what the Coalition can provide you? Hope Brecht with the Coalition is with me now. So tell me a little bit about some of the services that the Coalition offers communications-wise, because you have your website. You also have a podcast. You also have some other outreach programs, newsletters, stuff like that.
Yep. So our newsletter, you can sign up for that at our website also, supportfarmers.com. Our Fence Line podcast, hosted by Bob, can be found on any podcast platform, and that gets updated frequently. We have a new episode coming out next week. And then we'll have an episode recap of kind of everything that went on here today.
Yeah, we're going to talk in that, and some folks are listening to the podcast now, about where you can find out more information. So the other thing that you work with as well is planning windbreaks and maybe things like that around the farm. You have a listing on your website of cooperators, and these are folks that speak agriculture, speak farm, that you can talk to. How do we find that?
Yep, you can find our list of specially trained nursery and landscape professionals at our website, again, supportfarmers.com. Under programs, it'll be the Green Farmstead Partner Program, but you can also call 800-932-2436.
Hope, thanks for sitting in with us a little bit. I have mentioned many times that the Coalition is supported by Iowa's commodity groups and the Iowa Farm Bureau. The Coalition also draws support from some commercial partners, and we like to feature them from time to time here on the Fence Line. One of those is a young fellow who has an operation that I've used on my small farm to take care of weed buildup and managing weeds and algae in the farm pond. He and his company was also present at the Farming for the Future conference. Nick Coburn, and Nick is with Controlled Ponds. He has a display here at the Farming for the Future conference. Nick has done some pond work on our farm, so I can speak on Nick's behalf. The guy knows how to work, and he gets out there and has taken weeds and that mealy stuff off the top of our pond. So, number one, we've got clear water. If you could just get me a little bit more of it, I'd be in good shape.
That's our biggest problem right now is water in ponds, Now,
you had mentioned that you also, along with pond work, because, we're getting to the time of the year that we're probably going to be limited on pond work.
Right. Yep. Ponds are very seasonal. Yep. We have a limited window to get on those.
So you also do tree removal.
Yeah. Yep. We actually work with the coalition on the Green Farmstead Partner Program. So we plant trees to do wind blocks on farms. We also work on removing trees a lot in the fall as the pond season starts breaking off around this time of year.
I'll bet you're cutting down a lot of ash trees.
There are endless trees to remove, that's for sure.
Let's get back to the business of ponds.
Yeah, yep.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that because one of the things that you had done with our pond is brought in an aeration system. And when you told me about bringing aeration in, I'm talking about, well, I'll ask you to explain what it is.
Sure.
But and you said this is going to take care of the weeds in your pond. I didn't really maybe buy into it 100%. We're 100% on board now because we used to have enough weeds in that pond you could walk across it. And now we're at about a clear water level.
Yeah, yep. So there's two main things we did on that one. We'll discuss the aerators first since we're talking about it. What the aerators are we have air compressor up towards your shed there, and we trenched in a line for your specific pond. We got two air stones at the bottom that pump air in, much like you see on a fish tank with those little bubbles that come up. That's exactly what it is, but on large scale. So what we're doing is we're circulating that water, because a lot of times it just gets too stagnant, and that inhibits a lot of growth in your pond.
One of the things that I have noticed this year is on occasion, about August, late August, when it got real hot, you'd get kind of that stagnant water smell.
Yeah.
We didn't have that this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So a lot of that is when the water doesn't move, gases get trapped at the bottom and it creates a smell. But this aeration actually gets that moving and those gases don't get trapped anymore.
It was a kind of a simple solution, really, to that problem.
Yeah, correct. And we do a lot of windmill and solar options as well. So there's pretty much not a pond we can't get aeration into.
Now, you also introduced something in there that helped maybe clean the slime off the bottom.
Yeah, yep. So we also did a beneficial bacteria treatment. So there's a lot of extra muck and nutrients and things sitting at the bottom of the pond. And so this bacteria can go in and eat all that up.
Nick, thanks for talking to us a little bit. You can find out more about what Nick does at the website for the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers. It's supportfarmers.com. Well, let's get back to the proceedings Farming for the Future conference. More on the economic outlook. Christopher Pudenz was on the program. He is with the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation. And Christopher, it says Economics Research Manager with the folks at the Iowa Farm Bureau. And you were talking to a younger trending audience at the Farming for the Future conference. What maybe was topic A? What's the first thing you told these young folks about what maybe next year looks like?
I presented them, with the question, how low can we go in the livestock markets right now, with the title of Livestock Market Limbo. The first thing I talked to them about is the hog market. As everyone is well aware, unfortunately, the U.S. hog market has been not so great these last couple of years. 2023 especially is on track to be the worst year dating back to 1998 and even worse than 1998. So the hog markets aren't so great. Mm-hmm. Looking on forward into 2024, just some simple projections show that on into 2024 things aren't looking so hot either. So there's a lot of things going on that are causing those margins to be in the red. But that was the first topic that I talked about.
And I understand you're kind of trying to soften the blow a little bit, and I don't know that that's necessary. I think a lot of young folks want to know really what's going on as they're planning their future, and maybe it won't be in hogs for the next couple of years. Hogs used to be the mortgage lifter. It used to be because you could turn that over and you'd make some money on it, and they turn over a lot quicker than the cattle side. Let's talk about the cattle industry because we've got kind of a different situation going with cattle. I was looking at your numbers, and your market prediction looks pretty strong. In fact, I would say you're probably a little bullish on the market side. However, we're so low on numbers, I'm not sure that we're in a position to take a lot of advantage of that.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So the cattle market is an entirely different story right now. Estimates from Iowa State show that here in 2023, cattle producers had fantastic margins, $145 a head here in the month of October. We had even bigger margins than that, through the summer. Going forward, though, things could get a little dicey, and that is because feeder cattle have gotten so expensive. You mentioned inventory numbers. Inventory numbers declined from 21 to 22, again from 22 to 23. And going forward, there's a question of, when is this cattle cycle going to bottom out? When are we going to start expanding our breeding herd again? It looked like it might be, trending that direction. Cow slaughter was really occurring at a breakneck pace in 2022, slowed down through much of 2023, but then has upticked here back to that breakneck pace in 2023.
Let me ask you something right now about that. What is the percentage of heifers that we're feeding right now? Because that will indicate or maybe help predict how quick we're going to build back numbers.
Absolutely. We currently have 40% of the cattle on feed as heifers right now, which is the highest that it's been since like 2000, and even then it was just a tidge higher. So we are feeding our next year's cows, right? Next year's cows are currently on feed in cattle feedlots. There's serious money to be made, especially on the cow-calf side of things, on into 24 and 25. LMIC's projections, are over $400 per cow in 2024, and $600 in excess of $600 per head, for cows in 2025. But the question is, how many folks are going to actually have cows? The drought situation is what it is. Hay is expensive with things being so dry. So if you're able to be long cows come a couple years from now, it's probably going to pay, at least sitting where we are today. But the question is, can the cow-calf folks get there?
Well, and one of the key questions you talked about is margin, and what kind of margins can you expect? And I think that comes down to, if you're buying hay, it's going to be really tough. And what kind of a corn market are you looking at?
Yeah, so the cost of feed has come down on the corn side of things. Folks out there, they got out into the fields, and they realized, by and large, that the corn yielding was better than they expected. I was, in a room of 200 folks here, and I said, who got out in the fields and found corn yield worse than they were expecting? 2 people raised their hands. I said, who got out there and found corn yields better than they were expecting? Probably 30-40% of the room raised their hands.
Another interesting question that was asked, and I know we're going to get away from the subject here, but one of the other speakers asked, how many people here are driving an electric vehicle? And nobody raised their hand. So that was interesting. Hey, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Again, want to mention that if you want to know more about Christopher's presentation, as well as any of the presentations from the event today, go to the website supportfarmers.com. Well, we're going to wrap up this edition of The Fence Line with a look at some legal issues that were presented during the Farming for the Future conference. One of the presenters, our old buddy Eldon McAfee, Brick Gentry Law Office. And Eldon, we have a room full of young people who want to get involved in agriculture, want to get involved in animal agriculture in particular. And one of the first questions they're asking, and I know you're going to talk about it, is maybe some of the rules and regulations that pertain to livestock. And you were saying that here in Iowa, we may have some new ones.
We've looked at the major driving force here about 2 years ago was a petition filed by some environmental groups regarding the karst topography, which is mainly the northeast part of the state. And do we need different rules for the structures? Deep pits, earthen structures, lagoons have been banned for a number of years. But looking at whether we needed new rules there. And then in the meantime, what happened was the governor's office came out with Executive Order 10, which is designed to streamline rules and not really make anything more restrictive, but streamline them, cut back on the number of regulations, avoid duplication with the Iowa Code, which is adopted by the legislature. So that put together is what Chris Grunhagen with Iowa Farm Bureau and I are going to talk about today, what's coming. There's a lot of restructuring in the rules, technical, etc., but there are a few substantive issues. Karst, right now the proposal is the current rule, but there have been other proposals floated in the process up till now that will be discussed. It's going out for what we call notice and comment, and the comments, there'll be a couple of public hearings in February. And the deadline for public comment is, I believe, February 19th. A couple of other issues are how do we handle the master matrix sign up for the counties? That's part of this. We'll talk about that. Also, what I'm going to talk about, and Chris will cover some of this through what's EPA up to. What about the NRCS 590 standard? If you're getting EQIP money, we'll have some of that on the panel presentation. I'm going to talk about some of what I call nuts and bolts. And of course, Bob, not many people call an attorney and say, "Hey, Eldon, everything's going fine. I just wanted to let you know, and then, by the way, send me a bill." I get the calls where something's wrong. And we've had a lot of discussion, and there's been some media reports in the last year or so about all these producers who have been late filing their MMPs. Okay, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what really was going on there, and what about those notices from DNR, and were the producers really in violation of those notices? But the key point is, if you're doing your own MMPs as producers or working with consultants, pay attention to the deadlines.
Do you have to refile manure management plans?
Yes, you have to file every year, updates. Now, if nothing has changed, you just file an update that says nothing's changes.
Changed.
But the key is, you got to send them a check. There's this annual compliance fee. And I shouldn't have said the key is. That's a little harsh. But you have to provide an update every year.
Yeah.
And each producer has a due date, which is the first of a month. It's staggered throughout the year. And what has happened is, over the years, some of these notices that went out, it used to be DNR would send you a reminder. Well, they stopped doing that, but they'd send a notice that said, you were supposed to know yours was due first of the month. If you didn't send it in, they'd then send you a notice, what we call a notice of violation. And sometimes those notices in past years were saying, you're in violation, but if you don't get it in by the end of the month, there will be a compliance penalty. Well, some producers were then getting it in to avoid the compliance or the monetary penalty. And finally, DNR decided to start a program of, if you've been late for the first of the month deadline for 3 consecutive years, there will be a penalty, and that has happened to producers. And the question is, wait a minute, what did those notices say, and were they really late as far as a penalty when they got it in by that second deadline? But the key I want to make, producers, get it in by that first date.
I've got about a minute left with you, Eldon, and I want to go back to the karst, which in my mind is limestone type formation. And you're talking northeast Iowa. Is that the only area of the state? Because we do have limestone formations in other areas, and maybe folks aren't aware of those.
The major areas, northeast, east, central, some. Just limestone by itself is not necessarily karst.
Okay. Hey, Eldon, thanks so much for being with us today and talking to these young folks involved in agriculture.
Yeah.
Hey, Eldon McAfee with us, Gentry Law Firm. If you'd like to know and find out more about what Eldon had to say throughout the meeting today, you can check out the website at supportfarmers.com. Again, supportfarmers.com. Eldon McAfee, our good buddy, with us today. And friends, with that, we're out of time for this edition of The Fence Line. Thanks for joining us. The Fence Line is a production of the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers.